I don't know if schizophrenic is the right word. So I'm standing and I'm looking at Alan, right? And I'm like, okay, clearly I screwed up. That bushwhack took a lot out of me.
Sure.
And the sun's going down. About 10 minutes down the express, I'd pop on my headlamp. So I'm running down, right? Eventually, so I got to the parking lot, right? I got to the parking lot so I started descending at almost 8 p.m. off of San Antonio and got to the parking lot right around 10 o'clock. Actually, I think it was like 9:30. And I'm standing in the parking lot and I'm like, well, I did it. I successfully did the Seward and San Antonio. Mm-hmm. There is no car here to pick me up. So
no cell phone service either.
No cell phone service.
Yeah, you're on your own.
No one in their
right
cars. It is like almost 10 p.m. And I'm just like, all right.
Time to go hike Alan.
And so I walk to the road. And I'm like, I'm on the road. I turn left and I just go.
Yeah.
And I have a lot in me. I'm jogging. It's 1 mile. And I'm like, I'm looking for the stone mill. I'm looking for the stone mill on the right. Because right when you pass that, you're like a few hundred yards from the Allen Trailhead. Past the stone mill. I was like, great, almost there. Got to the Allen parking lot. Now it's like 10:30.
10:30 p.m. starting Allen Mountain for all of you High Peaks hikers
Just
out
after
there.
doing the Sewards and San
After
Antonio.
doing the Sewards and San Antonio and a bushwhack over there. And he's also going to be out for the next few days hiking the rest of the High Peaks.
Right.
So just take right now the idea of hiking Allen at 10:30 p.m.
Right. So at 10:30 p.m., I actually wanted to be
sleeping,
finishing Allen.
Yeah.
And here's why this was reasonable for me. Because to me, I was expecting that bushwhack and everything, like I said, like I was 2 hours behind schedule once I was on San Antonio. And once I got to the Allen Trailhead, I know it would take me 3 hours. So I calculated like 10 to 11 p.m. that it could theoretically be done with Allen. Mm-hmm. I had it in me.
Which isn't terrible.
Yeah, no, so I knew I could do it, and I accounted for the first day to be long. Mm-hmm. Okay? But I definitely think that was more than I really should have accounted for. And next time I won't be doing that either. I'll more than likely be going out and sleeping and then doing Allen first thing in the morning.
Totally.
So,
isn't it interesting? Let me just pause you real quick. Isn't it interesting how the one bushwhack you didn't do beforehand ended up being the first punch to the mouth on this whole journey? Like,
it's very humbling.
Right? I mean, humbling, I think, is the word. It's like the one, stone you left unturned, or you left turned, I should say, I think is where the way the phrase would go in this scenario.
And
is
it's
what?
Cuxakraga.
Yeah, right, dude. It's Cuxakraga, dude. Dismal
peak.
Wilderness.
By the way, trekking poles came in clutch over that bog. I got over it in 2 minutes.
All day. No
and guess
crows
what?
either.
Guys. Go straight. When you're on the bog, go straight. Trail to trail. Don't try to find a way around. Just go straight and have trekking poles. You'll be fine.
There it is. Assuming it's not super wet, because when it's super wet, it's a whole different world. But anyways, okay, so you have the 8 miles to go to Allen now at 10:30 p.m.
This is where you cue the eerie campfire story music. So, it is now 10:30 p.m. and I'm standing in the Allen Trailhead, and there's no cars, nothing. I say to myself, I am by myself, all alone, no way to contact anyone. People can track me, people can see where I am, but they don't know what's going on. The only option for communication is my SOS device. And I also knew that this was also going to be the most emotionally terrifying thing, and most of you are thinking, dude, come on. What you got to be concerned about? A bear? Deer's walking in the woods and scaring you? Well, to most people, I mean, yeah, that is what, but it's like, they just freak you out. You don't want them to bother you. I'm trying to do an FKT. I don't want to be emotionally bothered and lose sleep over hearing things in the woods, and let alone about to walk into the Allen Wilderness, which is by far the most remote high peak in the northeastern United States. There's a few other ones like out in New Hampshire that are pretty remote, but I mean, this is nuts. And it's almost a full moon. It's like 75%, right? So I turn some music on. I start walking. And I'm going. I come up to Lake Jimmy. And I'm like, all right, so we're going to turn left. We turn left because the bridge is out. Turn left, start going around. James, I want you to guess what I encountered.
I know that you know that I want to say that you encountered some sort of Sasquatch or Bigfoot type of situation here, but
I'm not kidding you right now.
Also, people, let me remind you, I have not heard any of his story yet, so that's why I'm stoked to hear this.
I am almost in tears right now telling you this because of what I went through over the course of the next 5 minutes.
Okay.
Like, it actually kind of scarred me. So, I start rounding Lake Jimmy, and right where the bridge would meet, I hear a very large splash in the water, okay? Very large splash. Like, it was clearly from a rock, not like a log or anything, a rock, and because of how big the splash was, you could tell the size of the rock. Your brain just kind of calculates these things. You knew it was large.
Sure.
Like a 15, like 15 pounder at least.
Okay.
And the first thought that went to my head was like, I don't know, some type of animal, fish in the water, and I was like, it was kind of rather, kind of big, but I thought kind of, like, you ever had that moment where, like, you joke around, you throw something in the water, like, oh, look at that fish, like, that's kind of what went through my head, but I kind of just stopped for a second. I was like, that was strange, and I start walking, and I get closer and closer, and then it happens again, but this time it was bigger, and it was a massive, huge rock bouncing off the shore and then going into the water. Like, it actually had momentum. And I'm probably 50 feet away from the water now. And the thing is, guys, there's no cliffs. It's flat. Completely flat. Hardwood forest. Okay? Nothing's gonna fall. No wind. Dead silence. I stop in my tracks. I am not panning. I'm panting. I just stand there. And I start shaking. I'm like, what the heck? And then it happens a third time. Huge rock. Okay? And it, like, you could tell how big it was. And it wasn't just in the water. It's, like, hitting other rocks. Like, something is clearly making this rock move. And it's a different rock every time.
Something's throwing a rock.
My body temperature dropped, like, 15 degrees instantly, and I started shaking. And there's two options in my head. I have to keep moving forward towards it and go past it, or just turn around, go back to the trailhead, and I don't know. I don't know.
Or hit the SOS button.
Do something. Completely just call it. Over what? Noises? But the thing is, like, guys, I need you to understand, the only reason why I'm so scared is because my mind cannot comprehend what is making these sounds. It has to be a creature throwing it, okay? And we're not talking pebbles or baseball-sized rocks. We are talking the size of basketballs, I promise, okay? And out of all the stories I've ever heard of Sasquatch, every one of them has to do with throwing rocks, trying to deter other people,
Sure.
Okay? I've heard the stories. I've read it, okay? It's their main way of communication when trying to whatever, all right? And so I stopped my music. I just stood there for an entire minute, dead silent, not breathing, just listening. I heard absolutely nothing. No more rocks. I was expecting that once I would start moving, that maybe a couple minutes later, I would hear another rock behind me. But thank God I didn't. And I just was like waiting to hear like rustling in the woods, something coming towards me. I did not want to look or pan in there. I didn't want to see glowing red eyes looking at me or anything, okay? Like, this wasn't a bear shuffling something. This wasn't a moose or a deer moving around the rocks. Something threw these things, okay? 3 times. Huge rocks. And I just briskly, just quietly and fast, just moved past, just kept going, didn't stop. And once I finally knew I was clear of Lake Jimmy, I started jogging. But I knew I was coming up to Lake Sally.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God nothing happened at Lake Sally. Nothing happened the rest of the night. But every, 3 minutes, I would be getting, flashback, slight PTSD from what I just experienced. This was by far the most horrifying thing I've ever experienced in my life. This is worse than any horror maze or horror movie you see because you actually feel like your life is being threatened. because I have no way of communication. I passed the hut, the ranger outpost hut.
I know that hut.
Okay? When you turn and you forget that thing is there.
Sure. Especially at night.
At 11 p.m., it's very eerie. But what did I notice? I didn't notice the door was wide open. That's not a locked door, but I've never seen it just open. But I'm sure people go there in all the time.
Sure.
But I was thinking, if I had to debunk it from being a person, the only thing I could think of is some weird hermit guy that was out there. Need to mind you, there were no cars in the parking lot. No, someone was out there staying in that hut or something and was like angry that I was there or something like that and purposely was throwing the rocks. I'm like, but no old hermit guy is going to chuck 20-pound rocks 3 times or whatever.
I'd say it's more outrageous that there would be some random dude out there doing that at that hour.
So there was a creature there doing something. And I talked to John LaFonara and I told him this. And he's like, bro, out of everything in the high peaks, I hate that wilderness. He said, I will never hike that at night, ever. My buddy wants to go solo, and I'm dreading having to go to Allen. I hate that hike. I hate everything about it in those woods. Okay? And the reason why this is more understandable in this region is because you're not in hard pine wood forest in like high peaks wilderness. When you're out in the middle of the high peaks at night, it's not scary because you got chipmunks and birds.
Yep.
And maybe the occasional bear that I've still never seen. I doubt they exist out here.
Same.
I really don't think they do.
You're so lucky if you come across a bear.
I saw the pictures of the dead bear. I'm just like, it was obviously planted. The moose, everything's elusive out here, okay? The fact that I have more proof to believe in Bigfoot than black bears out here now.
Sure.
Like, I haven't even seen the footprints, So, what I experienced that night very much, like, has stuck with me. And it has changed the way I hike now at night. Again, when I'm, like, in High Peaks Wilderness, Central High Peaks Wilderness, it's going to be different in my mind because I understand that wilderness a lot better than
Allen's its own animal.
It's like that's Van der Wacker wilderness, essentially, and it's horrifying. So that's why I'm never going to hike alone again. But eventually, I got about 3.5 miles in, about 1.5 miles before the Opalescent River, and I just was so delirious. Been going for 20 hours and 48 miles. I'm just like, this day took so much longer than it should have. It just really just did. And I just pitched my hammock, just went to bed.
There you go.
For 4 hours.
So you didn't go up Allen?
No.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I'm learning
didn't
that
go up
now.
Allen.
So you didn't make it up Allen. So you just where was it again? You just said
3.5 miles in from the trail.
3.5 miles in. So you still had another 4.5 miles to the base of Allen.
Yeah.
All right.
So I woke up bright and early at 4 a.m. and I went to bed at midnight.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not many.
And you have to also understand that, like, I'm also going through my mind, like, what could be out here around me. So I got, like,
hard to sleep in those scenarios when you're in a hammock in particular.
I was tired enough, though, where my body was allowed to sleep, right?
Great.
So now, I finally get my stuff. I knew I had 1 hour of darkness before my headlamp could be turned off, and I just start moving. Packed up all my stuff. I didn't even eat. I just kept going.
You basically took a nap. And that's, I mean, we had talked about, like, that's kind of what you're going to be doing each night is taking a nap more so than going to bed.
If you plan this thing right, you can get, like, 6 hours of sleep a night. You can.
And 6 hours, I think, would make a world of difference versus
for sure
2 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I finally got to Allen, just sent it up got back down. I don't remember what time I got over Allen or got up Allen, but I know it was like, let me see here. I was standing on Allen at 8:30 a.m. on the dot on the summit.
8:30 a.m. on the dot. And let's pause right now. So Allen is a holdover from day 1, when day 2 already had planned, and let me read to you, Redfield, and we'll talk about it, but summits he was going to hit on day 2 was Redfield, Cliff, Colden, Tabletop, Phelps, Street, Nye, Wright, Algonquin, Iroquois, and Marshall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right. Going to make a nice dozen.
So I'll explain why that made sense in my mind as well.